Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to a special issue episode of Tupa Da Vinci. We're talking today about Tesla's FSD. This is something that you guys have probably been keeping an eye on, and they had a new version update, version 9 of their beta. It rolled out last night, and we are going to talk about it. Sorry for the delay. We had a little bit of a connection issue, but I am joined by my very good friend, Alex, who runs a channel called TickerSymbolU. And I think we are going to collaborate a lot more in the future, but Alex on his channel talks about ARK Invest and some of the disruptive technology companies. Tesla kind of comes to mind, and self-driving cars come to mind. So today we're really going to break this down about the technology and the engineering side of it, and also what it means for Tesla stock and as an investor. So hopefully there's something there for everybody. But Alex, why don't you introduce yourself and say hello?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a huge 2-bit Da Vinci fan, first of all, so I'm super excited to be here. My name is Alex, and I run a channel called TickerSymbolU. TickerSymbolU is all about investing in disruptive innovation and talking about the technological side of investments and getting investors sort of up to speed on some of the biggest transformative technologies that are disrupting markets today, right? And that conversation cannot be had without Tesla. So I'm excited to talk about the implications of things like vision-only full self-driving and robotaxis and all of the exciting things, both from a technological perspective and a financial perspective. So that's my channel in a nutshell and why I'm here today.
Yeah, I think you and I should collaborate a lot more often. And the reason is we cover all this cool new stuff that could potentially be groundbreaking in terms of energy storage or energy generation, things that'll kind of help us get off the fossil fuels. But I always say if any of these things that we talk about ever want to have a chance to succeed, you got to check off two boxes. You got to have the science and engineering. You got to have the tech and the hardcore science part of it. You got to have that down. But it also has to be viable in terms of economics. You got to be able to approach investors and get money and be profitable. And otherwise, it's going to be a pipe dream. So really, if you can hit both of those check boxes, the two things that we talk about in our channels, well, then you just might have a chance to change the world. And that's kind of the way I see this. So today clearly is about Tesla. And why don't we talk a little bit about ARK Invest? We'll start with you and then I'll jump in. But why don't we talk about ARK Invest? Clearly Tesla, you mentioned, is a huge stakeholder. And clearly Tesla is one of those kind of flagship items in their portfolio. So what does Tesla mean to ARK Invest? Why is it in the portfolio? Why is Cathie Wood big on it? And what does the future look like for Tesla?
Sure, yeah. So just real quick, 30 seconds of background. There's a firm called ARK Invest out there. They're managed by, the funds are managed by somebody named Cathie Wood. And the focus of ARK Invest is solely in disruptive innovation, right? So they only look at these high growth, super disruptive companies, just like Tesla is disrupting traditional automotive, right? ARK Invest's flagship innovation fund is the biggest actively managed fund in the world. So this fund is moving mountains with Cathie Wood's investment decisions. And at the top of that fund, surprise, surprise, is Tesla. Tesla also sits in two other funds. Their Autonomous Revolution Fund, because of their Robotaxi initiative and all of the autonomy things they got going on, like full self-driving. And then they have another fund, the Advanced Internet Technologies Fund, and that's also key for FSD, right? So Tesla exists in three really big billion-dollar funds, all for different reasons: robotics, automation, software, and then energy storage, which is something I'm sure we'll talk about today. So altogether, Cathie Wood has $3 billion in Tesla. It's a massive position. And that's because ARK Invest strongly believe in this proposition of autonomous mobility as a service. So instead of you driving your car in the future, your car will be driving you. So that's probably it in a nutshell.
Yeah, there probably aren't too many companies out there that could be in three different funds, right? And ARK has all kinds of categories. Like they have a genomics fund. They do stuff with a cutting edge, genetic stuff and everything under the sun. So this is probably one of the few companies that kind of goes in and does all these different things. And then if you included like SpaceX and the Boring Company, I mean, just think about the reach of Elon's companies.
Neuralink, yep.
Neuralink, yeah. That one's still private, yeah. So
yeah.
Okay, so here's a question for you then. How important is self-driving in Tesla's share price? So for anybody who's watching, who's an investor, let us know in the comment section if you're a Tesla shareholder, because you'll particularly care about this question. But if Tesla's around $500 or $600 today, what is it that will get them to $1,000 or $1,500 a share? Is it building more EVs? Is it the self-driving proposition? Like, how important is it self-driving into Tesla's value?
Yeah, I think right now it's probably not valued in their stock price at all. That's a far-reaching thing. Um, but I think it will be pretty soon, especially, as they prove out vision only, for example. I think what gets Tesla's share price to 1,000 is just more execution, more of the same, more sales, better battery technology. So we can talk about their new upcoming battery chemistries, the form factors, right? Moving to the 4680, for example, the structural battery pack, all of the novel chemistries going into the battery. I think that pushes them to the $700, $800, $900 price range. Obviously we should be talking in terms of market cap, not exactly stock price, but either way, that probably doubles their market cap, right? And then the rest of it is offering this crazy service, this driverless taxi network, Uber less the driver that you have to pay for and insure and all that. I think that's what really blows them up past the $1,500 price range, 2,000 into 3,000 over the next 4 or 5 years. Is this autonomous robotaxi network that's not priced in at all today?
You don't think so? It's not
I
priced
do
in?
not. No, it's so very, very risky and so very, very novel because if they fail at it, I'm sure their price will go down. But I'm sure they still have to prove the success, especially, which I hope we talk about fairly soon. They just turned off all of their radars, right? So now they're
Yeah.
vision only. So it's even more of a risky proposition than it was literally the day before yesterday, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
no.
yeah, it's a tough question to answer. I personally think the self-driving is a little bit baked in the price today.
Oh,
I mean, compared to, like, if you compare just pure car sales or revenue or anything else, it's hard to get there any other way. I mean, there's just so much upside for the company, and they do have their hands in so many pots. But why don't we switch gears now? We've got about 140 people watching. Again, sorry for the delay getting started, but why don't we switch gears and play the video from Tesla Raj? So Raj runs a channel called Tesla Raj. He was supposed to be here, but he's on vacation with his family. Vacation, I don't get it, but no. But he was kind enough to take a moment yesterday and send us a video. So why don't we roll the video and see his impressions about the tech, get a quick peek at the new visualizations and stuff, and then we'll jump back and we'll chat about it. Sound good? All right, with no further ado, let's jump into Tesla Raj's video.
What's up, Ricky and Alex? Thanks for having me. I wish I could be there with you guys on the live stream, but no worries. I'm actually in my car. We're on vacation with the family, and I'm running V9 of FSD's beta, which was just released last night at midnight. I stayed up late. It was crazy. And some of the best things, two of the biggest things that you'll see that were improved are, of course, the visualization. So I'll go ahead and have my wife point at the screen here, and you can see bicyclists that just went by, the car that's going across. Previously, they were vector squares, and you didn't even see cars or anything of that sort. And now all of that stuff is being rendered like it is in the current builds. And so that's really nice. And it's got almost this dream-like situation going here. And curbs are identified as red, the median is yellow, and your follow line is green. Now I've got my map in here. I can double tap and we can go into FSD beta. And this is the biggest thing on V9. The second thing that came out with this update is their conversation of using the camera up above the rear view mirror right over here, now being used as driver awareness and driver attentiveness. So in my tests, I still needed to grab the steering wheel and nag it for it to go away. So I don't know how much they're using that, but essentially if you're not focused on the road, it could come up and tell you to pay attention based on that camera and based on where you're looking. But overall, just in my brief drives that I had today, it's been running really well. Some of the biggest things are that the turns are smoother and they're more confident. Of course, there are a couple situations where it stopped a little bit randomly. I've got a video up that you can link to or feature a part of it in this video that shows essentially zero disengagement drive for 20 minutes with even a 20-mile-per-hour hairpin turn, which was really amazing. Even my wife thought it was impressive. The only thing that I had to do in there was press the accelerator once just to kind of give it a little boost to change lanes and get on the freeway quicker. But other than that, I'm pretty impressed so far with what I'm seeing. I think there's still going to be, of course, some minor tweaks as this is still not perfected. It's still a beta, which Elon has made very clear. But overall, it's pretty good. I'm happy with the visualizations. You see everything, the people, so people's, cars, street signs, animals, I think that's traffic cones. Those are all visible. And then areas where you have like shops, stores, homes, they're in this dreamlike areas that are blurry and so forth. But you even see cars as brake lights and so forth. But yeah, overall, really good. I'm really excited for this, and I'm excited for, you know, where we go from here and how much better it gets. But I'm very impressed that on purely vision that this system's on, no more radar, it's able to see. Check this out. Let me show you this. If I zoom out on this intersection, look at how many cars are here. And it's seeing it. It's seeing cars all the way out there. And then look over there. Point the camera over there. Look at those cars all the way over there. It's seeing that. So it's seeing all this, the people, the lights, all of this it's able to see just based on cameras is very impressive. I didn't think that Tesla couldn't do it, but it's just impressive to see that I guess you don't need radar, so they're able to do it. But yeah, look forward to more videos, and I'll show you guys some more stuff as it comes out. Hope you guys are doing good. See ya.
Okay, so yeah, it's pretty freaking cool. So we should probably break this down and talk about some of the changes. Do you want to start with the radar, the removal of radar? Why don't you take that one?
Sure, yeah. So this update of FSD is the first vision-only update. That's exciting for a lot of reasons, and it's scary for a lot of reasons, both in a good way, right? So one of the things radars do is radars stand for radio detection and ranging, right? So it uses radio waves, in the front bumper or on the sides or wherever, pings out a radio signal, listens for a return, and then tries to measure the distance of that return, right? That's the ranging part and the detection part. So radio waves work well in snow, sleet, hail, rain, the dark, right? Fog, and so on, because unlike, they don't bounce light, right? So one of the things that radar buys Tesla is this all-weather ability to do things like know when to brake when a car brakes in front of you, or maintain a steady distance of a pace car in front of you, and so on. So by moving to vision only, those are the types of things that they give up, right? So let me start with the bear case. Do you want to tell us what's bad about radars, or would you like me to take that too?
So it's funny. Okay. Yeah, we'll switch it up, and I'll do the bad about radar. So really, yeah, their rationale for why they wanted to ditch radar, because you might think you already had it. Why would you remove something you already had? It's not like you're adding LiDAR, which is a whole another can of worms. But your cars have radar in the bumpers, like we've had this, and now you're removing it. Well, what it comes down to is you're monitoring real-time traveling data, meaning you have all these cameras, and you are having to deal with that data in real time at 60 frames a second. So that is a huge amount of computer workload. And what they were thinking is, look, we can range and target, like if you saw Tesla Raj's video, he showed you how many cars that the car is now able to detect and track. So every time the camera says, hey, here's a car, we believe it's a car, it'll draw like a box on it and track it and see where it's headed and make projections and predictions about it. The number of cars it's now able to track clearly is higher than my car, because I know how many cars I can see on my car, and it is not like what Raj just showed. So I think how they're able to do that is by ditching the radar, because otherwise you have to devote some level of compute power for the radar systems. And if Tesla says, look, we were using 20%, I'm making this up, 20% of our computing power, one or two cores of the CPU, whatever the case might be, for radar, well, that's compute power we're not using for the camera system. And that means that we can't track end targets in real time, right? So that was the rationale for why they made that move. It all sounds great in theory, but it does make me think about the one thing you brought up, which is bad weather, right? Radar, yeah, unlike camera vision or LiDAR, isn't affected by fog and condensate or moisture, rain, different environmental variables that could potentially play a role. What do you make of that? Is that a smart decision? Is there any drawbacks potentially? I mean, it makes sense for the happy path, right?
Right.
But is there any unintended consequences that could pop up?
I think there will be, and I think what you said is exactly right. The thing is, will the extra compute power that they gain by no longer processing and cleaning up noisy radar data help them in these extreme edge cases, right? So one thing that happens in vision-only processing is you're using the information you gain from motion as part of your data stream, right? So because snowflakes, for example, are moving in a different way than the rest of the environment, they can do optical tricks like filter out anything that's moving not in the same plane as the car is moving, right? So there's lots of funny math that they can pull in the vision only data to filter out things like snow, which is just noise to a camera, right? So I think that extra processing power will get them most of the way through vision only in these edge cases, because there's lots of precedent for different types of vision specific algorithms, image processing, and things like that to reduce that type of noise that we're fog, snow, ice, right? So I think so, but we'll see if they can do it in real time. That's the big differentiator here. Real time safety to the 99.9999 percentile, right? Because that's how many traffic accidents they're trying to avoid per, million miles driven or whatever.
This gets into some of the comments I'm seeing so far. So clearly there's people who, like Eric Burendorf says, the rocket scientists say they don't need radar. I believe him. There's that sentiment for sure. And then there are people like David McCarthy who say they need radar and LiDAR, also multiple sensors. Otherwise, I'm wasting my money on a system I can only use on perfect days. And then the comments kind of fall somewhere on that spectrum, right?
Yeah.
But, for example, you mentioned the real-time aspect. To kind of put into perspective why that's so important, if you drove for an hour and you came home and say, hey, Ricky, here's my 1 hour of drive data, go analyze it, and I could run on my computers and spend the next 2 days or something, that's easy. But to do this in real time, 60 times a second, that means that whatever workload or whatever operations or asynchronous like threads or whatever you're running on your computer systems, you got to be ready for the next frame around. You can't be dealing with, you can't have a stack of tasks start to pile up. So that's the challenge, and it's a really tricky challenge. It's part of the reason why Tesla, probably very smartly, has pretty low resolution cameras. I believe they're like 1.2 megapixel cameras, because if you had like a 5 megapixel camera, that workload number just goes up astronomically. So there's a lot of that makes sense to me as well. There's people who've mentioned that humans have a lot of different sensors, right? So if you think about the average person, I can hear, I can see, right? I don't have radar. I don't have echolocation or anything like that.
You don't? That's weird.
I figured you do with how fast you're going on YouTube. I figured there's something going on over there. But it's funny because I don't think of it like that. I don't think, hey, here's what a person has. This car should just do that and we're done. We're designing the perfect system. We should throw everything out the window and, to my mind, go about it the right way. Like airplanes, airplanes don't have radar. Airplanes don't have, ground. No, we should just fly them like people. Like that doesn't make any sense. We should make things as safe as we can. So I personally, I've been on the fence with LiDAR. There's people who think we need it and people who don't. I haven't really cared too much about LiDAR. But radar, I thought we probably should. And maybe in the future, they should have another CPU or a dedicated computer that can handle the radar aspect. And for the most part, when everything's going your way, forget it, ignore it. And only when you need to worry about it should you have to look at it. But I can see some weather conditions and some various edge cases where having radar, something that's not affected by visual deterrents like fog and stuff, could be handy. And somebody mentioned that if the weather is so bad, then maybe you shouldn't drive. But I've driven in heavy rain and stuff.
Right.
When I was in Louisville for a wedding recently, California, we don't get rain. We don't know, like it's not a common occurrence. You're in Florida, I'm sure you do. Louisville, same thing. We were driving, and all of a sudden it was sunny, and then it was like a monsoon for about an hour while we were driving. And I was going like 50 miles an hour because I could not see very well. How would FSD beta work there? I'm so curious. I mean, maybe it would do great. Maybe it wouldn't. We don't fully know. But I always think of automated systems from an engineering perspective, not as so I've gotten comments where people have said, you're not a computer vision expert. Like I am a software engineer, but I haven't spent too much time in computer vision. That's fair. But I did spend some time in aerospace engineering, and I've always kind of thought we should probably take a play out of their playbook. They build things to be like triple and quadruple redundant. Like the average flight control computer, there might be 4 computers doing the exact same thing. And as long as like 2 agree, everything's fine. But the minute 2 computers don't agree, they go to all 4 and they take a vote, and there's a whole system of things, right? And if any one of those 4 computers is down, they'll ground the plane and fix it. It's not like, so there's a huge level of redundancy. And on aircraft, we have old-fashioned stuff like gyros and pedostatic tubes for things like airspeed and altitude. And then we have GPS, and we have this, and we have got, ranging. We have a million different things. We don't have to rely on all of them. But if something bad happens, things can happen, right? Like, for example, I don't know what it is. It's really ticking me off right now. But after like 2 years of perfect phone access on my Tesla, where I walk up, unlock the door, get in and drive it off, the last week, 4 times this week, I've had the, hey, use your card to have to turn it on. It came out of nowhere. I think it was a regression in some bug that they introduced. I'm curious if anybody else who has a Tesla has seen this problem where their key card access has kind of been glitchy. I've also had drives where my entire screen didn't function, my backup camera didn't function for an entire day one time. Stuff happens, right? That's what I'm getting at, is stuff happens. And we want to be as safe as we can. So I'm right in the middle. I can see this going one of either way, but I'm really curious what other people think. But that is probably the biggest part about this. What else about the FSD 9 do you think is going to be impactful?
Yeah, so let me just touch on a few things you said, because I think you made a lot of really great, important points, and then I'll answer your question. So I agree that there's a big spectrum of safety versus sensing, right? So you can imagine no cameras like most modern cars today that drive yourself, all the way to every type of sensor you can imagine: radar, LiDAR, optics, acoustics, whatever you want to add to that list. And at some point, the return on your investment of adding the next sensor is very, very low, right? You're almost never going to use it, or you're using it in some edge case. So unlike airplanes, which maximize redundancy because they must maximize safety, the thesis I'll present to your audience is not every failure in a car is catastrophic, right? So when an airplane falls out of the sky, it's going to be a catastrophic failure, right? When a car hits a curb, at a low speed specifically, yeah, you knock a wheel out of alignment, you scuff a bumper, but you're going to be okay, right? So there's a big difference. And with that difference comes this other trade-off of insurability for non-catastrophic failures, redundancy, fault, like all these things that make the trade no longer worth it. So airplanes cost many millions of dollars. Cars, if you want the car to not cost many hundreds of thousands of dollars, you're going to need to trade some redundancy, extra sensing, extra compute power, take that out to start lowering the price. And there's probably some optimum between price and safety and performance, which is what all of these designs try to strive for, right? Different parts are along the same curve, right? The more expensive you get, the more you are putting in these premium safety features, as well as these premium luxury features, these premium sensing features. The sensor package itself, for example, not the sensor package, the software package itself, for example, is a $10,000 cost, right? So even getting access to it is luxury priced. So in that way, I think it's different than an airplane. I think the ultimate thing you want to do is find that sweet spot between price and safety performance. And the argument that Elon is fundamentally making is that price point should not include the cost of radar or LiDAR, right? And that's the discussion here, is like, should we include that? Okay, so now let's talk about FSD version 9 and the other impactful feature, which is this mind of car, visualization feature. Now that it's optical only, one of the things that Tesla is doing is showing you what the car sees. And I think we even saw that in Tesla Raj's video, right? So now, for the first time, I think users of the Tesla can really understand what the car is seeing, like in human visibility terms. One of the things that's very hard to do is visualize radar data, right? But now that it's optical only, it's like, check it out. This car looks like a car. The sidewalk looks like a sidewalk. We're adding in all of the predictive lines down the road based on what we're seeing, and we're showing you the vision plus the computer science and the computer vision math to show you truly what the car thinks is around it, right? So let's start there. Thanks for letting me monologue about that. I'm obviously super excited about it.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the coolest things about this is taking all that camera sensor data and being able to generate kind of a bird's eye view. I call it kind of like a look at the battlefield, the field, I guess, in this case. But that is wildly powerful, and that's all part of what's new, how they're able to stitch this camera camera information together, kind of get like a pseudo LiDAR approach where they can do depth mapping with just images and cameras only. I mean, what they're doing is unbelievably brilliant. That's the first thing to take away from this. I remember I built some tools for YouTube videos where I want to have the parallax effect, where I want to take a photo and say, look, this is a still image, but I want to make it look like it's kind of in real life. And how you do that is by making a depth map. And so I spent like an hour doing it one time. The cars are doing this like at 60 frames a second in real time. Yeah. But you can actually do some ranging from just a camera system alone. And so you combine that with the fact that they have 8 cameras, you fuse it all together, and the end result is unbelievably cool. They don't have that over-the-head view yet like some of these cars have. Have you ever driven a car where you get the full bird's eye view? It shows the car all around you and you can kind of see what's happening. I can't wait for that feature in my car. I think it would make parking in some weird little spaces super cool. But short of that, like what they're doing is fantastic. So how does that play in? How important is that to what comes next? You've mentioned like the importance of it, the significance of it, but like what does that do better than how we used to do it before version 9?
Yeah, so I mean, before version 9, one of the things that you would have to do is rely on multiple sensors, right? So one of the things one of the drawbacks of doing that is when the 2 sensors conflict. I actually think I saw that in your chat. Your chat looks like it's blowing up with great information. When there's conflicting sensors, how do you know what to trust? When a radar thinks something is very far away and your optics are telling you it's very close, you have this conflicting condition, right? Usually in that situation, in my, former expert opinion, as a guy who worked with both radars and cameras, radars tend to have a lot of false detections, right? So one of the things that happens is the computer needs to, in real time, keep processing new data and resolve this conflict in existing data. So what this gets us is essentially a faster processing pipeline, which means better safety, more reliable decisions, and more consistent errors, by which I mean radars and optics can have all sorts of different errors, not because either of them are wrong, but because the processing doesn't know how to resolve a difference between them, right? Maybe if a car is right in that sweet spot where you're considering braking as a human being, the camera says, oh, it's far enough away, you're fine. And the radar just says, oh, it's a little too close. You're going to get this jumpy braking in your car, right? This phantom braking as the car starts exiting and entering the brake zone repeatedly, right? Due to this race condition. So I think by moving to this the sensing paradigm, one of the things they're doing is they're setting themselves up for a much simpler processing path, which will make things safer down the line. Yes, I am in the camp that believes it became less safe when they took radar out initially in Tesla's lab, right? Not when it hit the road as FSD 9, but initially when they were like, okay, we're scrapping radar. How do we get back to the same safety margin in optics only? Same processing, new processing techniques, new image-only processing techniques. And then when they cross that threshold, that's what we're seeing now is an optics-only version of something that used to take radar and optics before, but the complexity of the combining of data beforehand is now gone.
Yeah, so SI Barrick says, Carpathy's point is that if you can't trust the radar, you shouldn't use it. Doesn't matter if you think you need it. And this is interesting. So radar's golden age is aviation, right? In aviation, you're miles from things. Like if you're flying an aircraft and you've got radar, what you're looking for is an aircraft at 42 miles away, right? That using radar in short range is an interesting thing because you're talking about like a nanosecond difference in a signal to be able to say that is closing or that's going further away or how far it is. So that is the first thing is like radar is incredible for aircraft because we're talking about such distances. It doesn't factor as well to your point about phantom braking. By the way, Bryce Burnett, thank you so much for your super chat. I appreciate you. He's got a little fist bump sticker. That's awesome. That's a cool sticker. I should make that a emoji on my Discord. So it is a weird thing in the car automotive sense because it's not really the perfect use case for radar. So that being said, I think that's kind of gotten us to where we are. Ryu says, phantom braking, it's exactly what we've seen before. A lot of people have actually reported this. I've been driving for about 2 years in my Tesla. I've actually never had a phantom braking problem, but I know a lot of people have reported that as like, please, Tesla, fix this. It's irritating me. And people have typically pointed to radar as the reason for it. But then it makes me think about a couple of other things. I watched a video, and I've kind of did a little bit of testing and noticed this as well. But there was a video of a driver. I forgot where they were. They were in autopilot, and there was a huge semi, kind of careened off the side of the road and parked like, perpendicular to their travel path. So it's this huge white rectangle, right?
Right.
And the car was closing in fast. The car had cameras which should see this massive object, but the massive object wasn't a thing. There was nothing in its database to say that's a car, that's a thing, that's a train, a bus.
Right.
It was just this massive white rectangle, something you probably never encountered. And also it has radar, and it was closing in fast. So again, radar should have been able to say there's something at 200 meters, and now it's 180 meters. But neither thing did anything, and the car just mashed into it. So I wonder what was lacking there, and if going camera only, to your point about kind of the workflow, the processing workflow that the SoCs have to go through, does removing radar and going to camera only and this new kind of sensory fusion of all the cameras and having a kind of a bird's eye view, does all that combined actually make the car safer? And those are the tests I think that we will start to see coming out, where we'll have those questions answered. We do know that they've done all their consumer report tests. There were some reports that Tesla loses their number one safest car honors because, and it was just because, well, they changed things and they got to retest it. That's all. It was a stupid headline, but they have reported they're as safe as they ever were with radar. It just comes down to edge cases. As a software person, it's the edge case will kill you. You can get like 80% of the stuff done in a couple of days, and that 20% can take you like 3 months to fully figure out, which is kind of why we're still talking about this. Somebody had mentioned, I think it was Eric. Eric said, I'm officially not listening to Elon's timetables because he's been wrong too many times. I'd run a poll before we started this show about how is their progress going? How do you feel Tesla's progress with FSD is going? And 50% said they're blown away. So I think part of this is expectations. I think Elon has been aggressive with timetables. And I personally think if they just stopped talking about it and just got to work and just had updates and they rolled out updates, I think everybody would be fine, because this is one of the greatest problems on earth that we're solving. And you've talked about the disruptive quality of what this could mean. Imagine that anybody could just hail an automated cab for like 40 cents a mile and go wherever they want for cheaper than anything else, right? It's hugely disruptive and hugely important, but it's also hugely challenging. So I actually think there's a little bit of a dichotomy between how hard of a problem this is and how amazing Tesla is at this and how far they've come, versus this expectations. Like they keep dangling this carrot that they're so close to it. And I think they should stop doing that and just keep focusing on the incredible engineering that's happening. What do you think?
I completely agree. One of the things that I think both Elon and ARK Invest and a lot of these other prolific, minds of our generation do very poorly is estimate in time, right? So I think they're
optimistic
both
and ambitious.
Exactly. And I think you need that. I think that's an intrinsically great quality in a leader. But, everyone has experienced getting burned by Elon's timetable and wanting something that he promised yesterday and it's tomorrow and it's still not here. But I do think that's the best way to be wrong, right? So let me give you the counter argument. I don't think that Elon Musk will not solve self-driving. I think optical only self-driving is possible. I think we will see robotaxis. I think Tesla will succeed in all the ways Elon says. I think what we're all disagreeing about and like hemming and hawing about is when, right? And if we all agree that Elon Musk and Tesla will succeed, and we're only arguing about when, we're all on the right side of history, right? So I think we should all be very happy and optimistic about the future, regardless of if the future is 4 years from now or 6 years from now, which doesn't sound that different when I say it, but that's a 50% difference in time, right? Like between those two numbers.
So if I had to pin you down to make a prediction, when do we have? So part of this too is naming. FSD is just a term Tesla came up with. It doesn't really have to mean anything. They have some metrics that they can meet. They can do that. I'm talking about is like autonomy levels 4 and 5, where you don't have to have a steering wheel in the car. A driver will just sit into a vehicle with like a big cabin and be driven around. How far are we from a reality where that's possible, where there's no human intervention, no steering wheels? You just get in and there's this magic robot driver.
My guess is 10 years. My guess is 2031. The first car hits the streets, and you don't, like, maybe you don't even buy it, right? Maybe the whole financial model, like owning a vehicle, why would I do that? Every vehicle is a robotaxi.
Right.
I'm certainly not going to buy a vehicle if I can't even drive it, right? You'll have all those kinds of conversations. I believe, because the other thing we're kind of ignoring is regulation, right? Like, what does it mean? Who is at fault if the car is driving itself? Now I can't intervene and I get into a fatal accident, right? Like, so I think regulation is a far way to go. I think the science is there. I think in the next 2, 3, 4 years, cars will be able to drive themselves without a steering wheel. 99 point, and then as many nines as you let me say from now until the end of the stream, that's safe. But and then the question is, can you make lawmakers, regulators, insurance companies believe it's that safe? And the one time there is an accident, how do you verify how many nines it took to get there?
Yeah, so here's the audience has a couple of predictions. Eric Burendorf says 3 to 6 years. That's probably a pretty good guess. Gary Ballard says end of 2028. There was one other one. And then David McCarthy says more than a decade. He spent 35 years in AI. So you make a good point, which is there's going to be different road markers along the way. There's going to be several check-in points. I think in a couple of years, you'll have a Tesla that can go like a couple of weeks without a disengagement. And a driver like, so Raj mentioned, he has a video, and I have a link in the description of this video, where he drove for 20, 30 minutes several times, and he had no disengagements. He got into his car, had his hand on the wheel, and did nothing. The car did all of it. And then with this version 9. And then there were a few times when the car made a mistake or did something wrong. In one case, it was a very big mistake, like an oncoming car that he had to slow down for. So huge levels of progress have already happened. So now the question becomes, how far until we have a car that pretty much drives itself? You barely have to worry. It'll do most of everything right. And on that occasional moment when things screw up, you got to take over, to all the way to full self-driving, like in the futuristic movies that we watch, right? So you mentioned regulation, and this is something I touched on in a video that I made. And I think people have this notion that Tesla is going to write their own code and they're going to be operating on public roads with their own proprietary tech and just be able to do so without any regulation. I don't think that's going to happen. I think eventually, and it won't be rational. People always make this argument that I'm with you. I want to see this technology. I can't wait. But people are a little bit irrational. I make the analogy, the average aircraft of like anything modern, really modern, especially like 787 Dreamliner onward, they can fly themselves. There's no need for a pilot. They take off, they fly, they land, they can do all of it. But if you told a person, hey, I got this airline, it's called Ricky at Tuba Da Vinci Air, we have no pilots, we pass savings on to you, I don't think anyone would fly it. Some of the cutting edge people might, but the point is, people want to know there's a guy or a gal with a hat and wings on their arm sitting in there. It's just it's a human thing, right? That'll change in time, but it's a generational thing probably as well. But there is an element to this where regulations will be come into play. So the very first few times there's accidents with these self-driving companies like Waymo or Tesla or whoever else, we're going to have to enforce some laws. The main thing for me is I don't trust that any company with their proprietary code base can just operate. You have to imagine a driving test is what I called it on my video, right? Imagine there's a course where you put the car in and you have it drive this course, and there's like a check, just like when you and I got our driver's licenses, right? You have to be able to read a road sign from this distance and know what it is and report it in a certain amount of time. You have to be able to take care of these various, interactions with cars or pedestrians or whatnot. And if you put your car in there, it's this standardized course, and you complete it, you get an approval, and you get to operate. And maybe they have to, every so often, if you update your code, you have to get a recertification or something, right? This is the boring lawyer speak, but sadly, there's going to be a bit of that. Do you agree? What does that look like? What does the future in terms of the regulatory aspect look like to you? And how do we certify a car to be safe?
Yeah, I think that is an incredible way to do it. I would love to see something like a standardized road test for autonomous vehicles. It's some reasonable obstacle course, including a few edge cases that are meant to trip up sensors and things like that a human would easily pass, right? That's the trick, is we're always comparing these things for now to human drivers, right? So, this is a dog at a strange angle. You recognize it as a dog, but cameras tied to a neural network may not, because it's at some weird angle, not facing you, whatever. Any car that operates that way should be able to operate on the road, right? I agree with that. I think what's actually going to happen is a much less romantic version of that, where a bunch of lawmakers who don't have artificial intelligence or, automotive backgrounds sit in a room and decide if they are willing to put their sons and daughters in that car, right? And if they're not, then, some proof has to happen where they would all of a sudden say, hey, it makes no economic sense to stop this. And where I think that actually happens is some country will say, you can operate here. We're willing to move to the full autonomous network. Our roads support it. Our infrastructure supports it. And our legal system is going to support it. Come here first. And then American lawmakers and other lawmakers will be like, whoa, 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 we're not willing to lose this business. Now let's evaluate it, right? And this is exactly, by the way, just learning from history a little bit, what happened with drones. Amazon runs its own drone airline. The FAA said, absolutely not. We're not letting you fly drones on your own airspace inside your own, perimeters. Other countries said, hey, we'll let you do that here. And then the FAA took a step back and said, okay, well, maybe we should reevaluate because costs are going to be lower overseas than they are here, and all these other implications from drones, right? They're cost-saving mechanisms. The same thing will happen with autonomy. There will be some regulatory pressure from somewhere to cause people to change their minds. It won't be rational. It'll be absolutely the other thing where it's economic, right?
You make a good point. The part with regulators that really always irk me is it's not the experts in the industry making decisions. It's people who have no clue how any of this works, right? It's the same reason why the big tech companies get away with so much stuff is because nobody in government has a clue how anything in a computer works. Like these are not the minds that are going to be shaping the future. That's just sadly the truth. And people who do think like that typically don't go into government. So I do have a little bit of a skepticism about that. But I hope that the path to autonomy is clear enough and fair enough for all companies to have a chance to do it. There's going to be some other parts too to this. So the human element isn't just in terms of like the predict or the perceived safety of the operation. It's also in lobbying Congress people to say, I run a taxi service or I drive big trucks and and I'm a union truck driving company and I don't want to lose 1 million or 3 million jobs in America because every truck will be automated and they'll be lobbying Congress and whatever state most of the trucks are registered in. I'm sure there's a state out there. Like I always know U-Hauls are registered in Arizona or there's another state. You'll never see a U-Haul with a California license plate on it because that'd be stupid. Why would you want to lose all your money paying California payments and taxes?
Yeah, that
so
makes
there's
sense.
there's probably a state where all the trucks are licensed and stuff, and that state is going to lobby hard and ban and block. And this is the sad part about it. I think we don't have to focus on this part. I think there's going to be all the typical, all the games that like tobacco industry has played, or like the oil companies even play to this day. Will probably play a role. But let's focus on the fun part, like the amazing technology of it all. Have you driven an FSD beta car yet?
I have not, no.
You have not? Yeah, so I drove in Tesla Raj's car a couple months ago. I haven't been in a new one with version 9. And maybe we'll do a call again in a couple of weeks with Raj after he's had it a little bit more to talk about it. But I mean, it is a really crazy experience. And I remember I've been driving with autopilot for a while, but the first time you don't trust, it's hard to trust a system, right? But if you do it right and you do a good job over and over, like my car has so far, before you know it, it just feels like secondary nature to just let the car do the thing and you trust it. That trust is going to be absolutely crucial. So that's why I'm glad Tesla is doing the beta rollout small and in a controlled manner, because if there are some things to work out, get it fixed and before you go to a larger audience, because there are some people who are on the fence about this technology. There's always going to be people who are late adopters who don't want anything to do with this, who like driving the car themselves, don't care for this feature. And the funny part is we all kind of live in our bubbles. If you look at this chat right now, the people in this chat are super intelligent people with like FSD and they're cutting edge technologists and they're early adopters. But that's like 15 or 20% of Tesla drivers. Even in polls I've seen among Tesla drivers, they don't buy or use FSD because for them it's an electric car. That's why they're buying it. It's not for all this crazy cutting edge stuff. So there's, a 10-year time frame I think kind of makes sense for what you were saying. what do you think people will trust it? Do you think people will pay for it? And also, what do you make about their model of how you pay for this? $10,000 is a ton of money. That's like a used car. That's more money than my first several cars I've ever owned.
Yeah.
And versus a monthly subscription.
Yeah, I think it just depends what you are getting out of it, right? So, for example, my mother is already in a position where she doesn't really drive herself. So, for her, a $10,000 price tag is simply the difference between being able to drive and not, right? If all she has to do is babysit a car and be able to intervene, I know there's more to it than that, but just in this hypothetical a few years from now, where as long as you're cognizant and able to stop the car and then reinitiate autopilot or full self driving, excuse me, now all of a sudden you can get to places you couldn't before, right? On the other hand, if you're trying to run an autonomous taxi business, right, like moving away from human drivers but to taxis, now the subscription service makes a little more sense because, hey, instead of paying this upfront cost that depreciates instantly, I'm paying for a service that I'm more than making up on the back end by, charging per mile when I pay a flat monthly fee and so on and so forth. So I think it really depends. I'm curious to see if we'll always have the option of either or, like, hey, I can pay this huge lump sum, or if it will be only a subscription service down the road because people are like, hey, this price is so outrageous, no one will ever pay it. But the thing to remember is, there's two types of people that buy Teslas. There's individuals like you and me, and then there's businesses who want to operate fleets of vehicles for whatever reason. Luxury Ubers, a hotel that switches all of their shuttles to Teslas, so on and so forth. Limo drivers that say, hey, we want our small cars to be, Model X's, so on and so forth. And those people are willing to pay these premium prices because they're making money back on their car as a business asset, not just as a, thing that they own that gets them around, a transportation vehicle.
So there's a comment I wanted to share from earlier. Bong Hollywood, who's one of our patrons on and big fans, says, remember about cell phones and airplanes, how they had to be turned off for about like 10 years ago? And then suddenly, because it was just being overly cautious. It's like, look, cell phones have radio waves. Let's just not allow it and operate a plane. And then they were like, okay, if we really broke it down, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect anything. Let's just let them use it. And now, I don't know how many years ago it was now, but yeah, they don't care. Just do what you gotta do. And now they tell you bigger things, maybe a bigger laptop or a bigger transmitting device. Those had to be turned off now. That's just the nature of it. We always get very, very conservative and then slowly open up more, right? So I thought that was a great comment. I remember those times. Then there's some comments about, is it worth it to have people paid? So some people, Joja mentions that he did not buy FSD because he thought the cost versus capabilities didn't make sense. But if FSD was fully autonomous, he'd buy it in a heartbeat, right? There's that sentiment. And people also have been talking about Tesla's policy. If you buy a car with FSD and then you go to trade it into Tesla to buy a new car, which for a lot of people who don't want to deal with the headache of it, they might do that. You don't get that price reflected in your trade-in value. They basically turn it off and they'll sell to the next person with the option of, which is a really jerk move. That is, I love Tesla, but they do a couple of things that really make me scratch my head, and that's one of them. And then somebody mentions it doesn't matter if you sell a private party. So if you sell a private party and it has FSD, you sell it, it stays on. They don't turn it off and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot to it. And somebody mentions, if I could just have it for a month at a time, whenever I'm on a road trip or going somewhere, and turn it off and on, that'd be cool. We should probably talk. Oh, there's Siri jumping in. She has an opinion, but we should probably ask the audience as well, what is a price point? What is a monthly, this many dollars per month that would make you comfortable? And before you answer that, thank you, Lawrence McGill, for your super chat. Really appreciate you. It helps us to keep this thing going. So thank you so much. But Alex, what do you think? And I'll read the comments as they come. How much a month makes sense?
Sure. Yeah. I think I'd be willing to pay, $2 or $3 a day, right? Which works out to like 60 or 90 bucks a month. I know I have friends who, some have disabilities that again prevent them from, driving full time, but they can drive in bursts. They're cognizant, they're aware. And if FSD solves their problem, they'd be paying $5, $6 a day, right? That gets you into $200 or $300 a month easy. So I think it just depends what exactly the parameters are, what kind of money or value you're extracting from it. But I could see this service being multi-hundreds of dollars a month and still be justified.
Okay, so I think you hit pretty much all the numbers. Bong Hollywood says 150-ish. And then there's people who say $50 a month. You mentioned a couple dollars a day, which would be $60 or $90 a month. $100 a month. 100 to me sounds like a good number, but I'm with you. I fear it might be more than that. Somebody says 150 maximum. I think it could really pretty quickly get it to the $199 a month kind of range. And even at that point, there's no commitment. It's up to you. I'm okay with that model. It's it could probably work for most people. I think that'd be a good way to pay for it. So before I forget, because this has come up a couple of times, and we got to talk about this, which is the insurance portion and liability. So you're driving, you have FSD, you pay $10,000 for it, you pay a monthly fee or whatever it is. You're driving, and your car hits me, and you do some major damage, and I'm in the hospital or something. Who's at fault?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think at that point, Tesla is at fault, right? Like, I think one of the things that they have to do, including in that number, is their insurance model for that number. How many times are they getting into accidents globally per mile driven or whatever? You would need Tesla insurance, or whatever insurance product covers autonomous decisions that result in fatalities, right?
I think you hit on the head. So the Tesla insurance product, Tesla seems to be like playing chess when everybody else is playing checkers, or whatever the saying is. They just seem to be so many steps ahead. Rolling out their insurance product makes a ton of sense, because I think that actually might be the bridge to make this all possible. This will come down to liability. And like, let's say I have Liberty Mutual Insurance, it doesn't matter, and I drive with FSD. They're going to be very keen if I have a claim, and they're going to go, were you driving? Because I insure you. I don't insure this Tesla product I don't know anything about, right? And then suddenly they refuse claims, and there's going to be all this stuff. The way you get around it is if the company who offers the self-driving product has the insurance as well, because the liability is their own. They can build in pricing into their models, and they can take the risk accordingly. If they want to charge you $1,000 a month for insurance because they don't trust their own thing, or charge you the same price as every other insurance company out there because they know their stuff is good, I think that is the model that works. Because now it's kind of like I have Kaiser, so I always say, if I have to go to the doctor, they don't try to gouge me because they're the insurance and the doctor. My incentive structure is in place that it doesn't behoove them to try to rip me off or anything. It's the same sort of thing, right? This would be the Kaiser model for Tesla, which is we're the insurer and the provider of the service. So we know how good we are, we know what it takes, and we can profitably do it. So does that mean that every company offering a full self-driving kind of a service needs to be their own insurance company as well, or do they need to partner with somebody? Those are kind of some questions that you might have to think about, right?
Yeah, and I think, one of the things like that all sounds very like negative. It's like, who is in charge of these fatalities when a robot kills a person, right? Like, but let's flip the script. What's going to happen, what hopefully will happen, we're all kind of in the future is awesome camp, right?
Right.
So as these cars get safer than human drivers, insurance premiums should, in theory, go down, which gets passed on to the person, right? So if you say, hey, I'm willing to take my hands off the wheel, and now the car is safer because the robot is better at driving it than I am, and now my insurance premium, my lower insurance premium, is one of the rewards I get for saying I'm less safe, I agree, I'm willing to take my hands off the wheel. Now insurance is all of a sudden more affordable, and the world is a safer place, and you get to capture some of that. The cost savings will get split between Tesla becoming a more profitable company, right? Insuring people with less accidents per mile driven at the same rate, and passing those cost savings off to their user base, which makes their insurance product the much more attractive product. Why would I pay $100 a month for insurance when Tesla offers it for 70 and it's safer? And what I think will actually happen, obviously, is they'll split the difference, collect half the difference in profits, pass the other half to you to get you on Tesla insurance, and everybody wins, assuming that their product is actually safer. So, now we're using something kind of as unfun as insurance, but the net result is a lot more fun, right? Money in your pocket, safer car to drive. You get to spend more time on the road doing other things, whether it's watching Netflix or whatever you can do at true level 5 autonomy when you no longer have to babysit the car, right? Whatever productive thing you want to do, or, just kind of read a book, and you're paying less money to do that.
You make a really good point. And I think about when they introduced things like anti-lock brakes or stability control in cars. Those technologies were so wildly impactful. Like if you've driven a car that doesn't have anti-lock brakes, my motorcycle didn't have anti-lock brakes, which is I always said the next one I buy, I want it to have it. You like locking up your wheels is a scary thing because then now you're out of control. You don't have traction with the road. You're gonna careen and go wherever the car's momentum is gonna take it. When these technologies came along, cars that had that tech, insurance companies did the numbers. They're very good at this game. And they knew, yeah, we can insure this guy for this much. But if you're driving some old car, odds are you're paying higher premiums, and this is part of the reason why. So what happens when, Tesla's, and we keep saying Tesla, but I mean other people will eventually have this too. When Tesla and others figure out self-driving and they realize that the rate of incident is so wildly low that we can lower your premiums. Like, congratulations, Ricky, we just wanted to email you and let you know, because you're probably shopping around, that we can lower your rate 25%. And they're doing it because they know that my car is so much safer now. And when that happens, what will happen to other people who don't have full self-driving cars, their insurance premiums might go up, right? It's kind of the same thing that happens when you have more and more electric cars that are more high-tech and all this stuff. Eventually, it'll be harder to fill up gasoline cars because the incentive structure for gas companies, I mean, the demand will be so much lower that they're not going to, a gallon of gas will probably go up in price. Insuring an older car that's gasoline might be more difficult. Companies don't want your car to have a, blown cylinder head or something like that. Things that just don't happen on EVs. So there's an inflection point upon which the tides turn, and actually it becomes cheaper to have the new technology than it is the old technology, right? There's examples of that throughout the ages. But it's an interesting thing that we have. You mentioned that we're in the future is going to be awesome camp, which is exactly right. What else about Tesla's FSD? What do you see that would be disrupted? Like, what are some of the disruptions that you think of when you think about how important this technology is to like ARC's funds and various investment perspectives? What are the disruptive aspects of a full self-driving car?
Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about like FSD. Maybe let's take the car out of it for a second. So the idea of autonomous mobility, I think, is going to be super duper impactful, right? You mentioned ARC, and they're really on the forefront of a lot of these ideas. They publish a lot of research into things like autonomous mobility, lots of computer science, computer engineering, electrical engineering stuff, which it sounds like that's both of our backgrounds. So that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about their research. But they talk a lot about autonomous mobility, not just in the sense of cars, but in the sense of like, what about aerial drones? What about a drone system that's camera only, just like, FSD is today, but now using the same, small cameras and a small chip behind those cameras. Now you can identify landing zones. Now you can map a 3D environment and use that to send that map to like emergency services or something, right? A building collapses, you get a drone up there, you circle it around, it develops its own map to know where it is relative to the debris to not crash, kind of like a car does. It develops that 3D map to say, hey, these are all the obstacles around me. I know I'm safe because none of them are in any sort of zone close to me. But now the drone also offloads that map to nearby emergency services to help them understand, hey, here's the rubble, here are the danger zones, here's where people might be, here are the parts of the area that are no longer accessible. So here's like the best, it's planning a route for emergency services on the ground to get there. It's the same fundamental technology. We're talking about building 3D point clouds with cameras, stitching them together over time, right? Using that time dimension to gather that depth information, and then passing that to a third computer, which, unlike a Tesla, it does all of its computing on board. But now you have some wireless signal that says, hey, here's what I'm looking at, right? And now you have drone-to-drone connectivity and all the wireless communications that come with that. But fundamentally, the science behind doing something like that is the full self-driving science. That's what we're talking about with the Tesla. Tesla's one drone.
How about, so if you're in the world, Earhart just became a channel member. Thank you so much, Earhart. We'll reach out to you about joining our Discord. We really appreciate you. That's awesome news. So what about, I was just thinking about this the other day. We have a lot of electric commercial vehicles in the works, right? There's a bunch of people building semis and trucks and various commercial school buses and all that sort of thing. Now, if I'm a buyer and I know that Tesla's got full self-driving, the thing about Tesla is their full self-driving is going to be leveraged right into the Tesla Semi. I mean, I'm almost wondering, is Tesla kind of waiting for the Semi for both the 4680 battery cell supply and also for some level of self-driving where they can even pitch that as part of the perk? Like, by the way, you buy the Tesla Semi versus any other EV brand who doesn't have self-driving like we do, and your truck will drive itself, right? That doesn't that just become like the selling feature? Like, why would I buy any other product? If I'm going to buy a truck, don't I want the Cybertruck because it has self-driving? Also, if they have the Semi and there's towing and there's some special custom code that has to happen for towing, it'll probably make its way in the Cybertruck before any other vehicle, right? I mean, doesn't that become like the selling factor for Tesla going forward? Is their FSD?
Yeah, I definitely think that's one of the major ones. There's nothing like being able to take a long road trip and now have it be easier in general, right? One of the channels I follow is this guy. His name is Gally. He's on Hyperchange, and one of the things he talks about is he's a very skittish driver, right? So one of the things that FSD does for him, and even like autopilot, is it just helps reduce that stress because now instead of literally having to control the car 100% of the time, which obviously semi drivers have to do and drivers towing things have to do, imagine how much more stressful that is than just controlling the car, right? With a hitch and the dynamics of your payload doing this,
Yeah,
right?
no kidding.
Like, right. So now instead you're babysitting the car, understanding what it's doing, but now, you're not making moment by moment decisions. You're just understanding what the car is doing. And as a result, that driver fatigue takes a lot longer to happen, right? Instead of 4 hours, maybe it happens in 6, maybe it happens in 8, maybe fatigue is no longer a limiting factor. Now it's like whenever I want to go to bed, it's because I'm tired, not because my brain hurts from doing this hard mechanical thing for 8 hours. So I think that's the real beneficial thing for semi drivers, long road trip drivers, U-Haul drivers with Cybertrucks and things like that, is that driver fatigue is going to go way down, in my opinion.
You're 100% right. I don't know if you've done road trips in a Tesla before, but I live in Southern
Yeah.
California. My family lives in Northern California. It's about a 500-mile drive. I have made that drive over 100 times. It might be like several hundred times at this point over the years. When I would do it in my gas, like dumb cars in the past, I would get to my mom and dad's house and I would be like, Mom and Dad, hi, bye, I'm going to bed. My mind is
Right.
fried. You're not doing that much, but it does take it out of you. Like your mind it's a distracting and exhausting process. I make that drive with my Tesla now. I get there and I feel like the day is mine. I feel like I've just been sitting down all day and I feel like let's do something. What's going on? Which is it's incredible. Like the difference for me is night and day. And that goes to the driver fatigue part you mentioned. I also want to touch on something you mentioned about Gally from Hyperchange. When we talk about some of these disruptive technologies, people always think it'll take a lot longer than it'll take. Like when smartphones came out, nobody could have predicted that if you don't have a smartphone app, you're dead in the water as a new startup company. No one could have thought that would happen in like 10 years,
Right.
5 years. But that's how it goes. And so Gally is a younger generation. He's like, he didn't even drive before. I don't think he probably got his driver's license pretty late. A lot of people do this where they don't really care about cars. They don't care about driving. But then suddenly Tesla comes along and it's this tech product. It's not really a car product. It is. It's a killer car product, but they like it for the technology part. So what happens as younger and younger generations are getting older, the next 5 or 10 years, you're going to have people who grew up reading about Tesla news on their smartphones at the age of 10 who are now getting mature and never cared for driving or maybe wouldn't have gone on to get their driver's license who now look at this technology. So these demographics are going to shift incredibly quickly, right? And people who, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's kind of tied to age. And that's not always the case. There are some really hip older people who are like cutting edge, who had the very first Teslas. I have several viewers who've
Right.
told me like, Ricky, that's not exactly true. I'm 80 and I bought a Tesla on day one in 2012 and I got the Plaid. And so there are always exceptions, but largely these demographics shift quickly. And that's what makes this disruptive technology sneak up on people. They think no one's gonna be ready for this. This is never gonna happen. And all of a sudden computing power keeps going up, doubles every year, a couple of years, and the technology and everything else slowly builds up, and the demographic shift, and you've got yourself kind of that tide that lifts everything up. What what is it you think about? What is it about Tesla that has you the most excited in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think you actually really hit the nail on the head there, right? Like, I don't think about Teslas as cars. I think about them as, uh, like software defined batteries or something, autonomous platforms. Kind of like how I don't think about the iPhone or modern phones as phones. I think about them as like computers in your pocket, right? They're apps. Like I definitely don't use my phone as a phone, for example, right? Like I'm one of those people that's like, oh, don't call me, text me. So I think one of the things I'm actually most excited about this transportation platform, like not even using the word car, is all of the things that happen after they solve autonomy. So like, okay, autonomous is done. What happens now? Now I think transportation is going to be a really cool experience. What do I mean by that? I mean luxury transport systems that help bring work environments to you, right? Kind of like how people can rent offices today. You'll be able to rent mobile offices tomorrow that are designed for you to be productive. Or entertainment, right? Here's a luxury shopping platform that carries you store to store. And as you pass by stores, you get these limited window discounts where you're like, oh, stop the car. I want to go there. And it's like, okay, you have 2 minutes to use this coupon before it expires, or like 2 minutes to decide to stop the car before the coupon expires because, it's all of a sudden it's not economic to stop and turn around and go back to that store, right? Delivery platforms, right? We can talk about all of the discounts you can get for playing a game and having something get delivered to you as a prize. So I think this idea of autonomous mobility as a platform, stepping away from the car and being able to treat transportation as an experience, either you to a thing to you, or just like the journey itself, will open a lot of doors for new types of businesses, new experiential like A to B travel businesses, and so on. And I'm really excited for that. Netflix in cars, right? Like, instead of driving, I can finally catch up on that show and, rest my hands behind my head. Sounds really exciting to me,
Yeah, being productive. It does kind of fly in the face of what's happening in terms of people working from home. I think one of the lasting impacts of COVID-19 is going to be more remote work, which means less commuting. But anyways, when you're in the car, why not do something fun, read a book, watch TV? That's that much more marketing opportunity, right? Yeah, there's going to be companies that really capitalize on that. Again, a place where Tesla feels ahead to me because their software in their car is so much more advanced than anything else out there. I've driven quite a few EVs, and Tesla's is by far the greatest. And they're really open-ended, and they have like an active software team, and they could easily implement some of the features you're talking about. They could have a service kind of like I like Groupon, where they could have callers like, hey, restaurants, let us know. We can send notifications saying 20% off deli subs today when drivers are near your location, and they could roll that out on their own today. Like there's nothing stopping them. Their software is that advanced that they could do that. Whereas like these other cars, like they're not responsive. They just feel like they're super clunky. I think Tesla is poised for all that comes. And that's what happens when you're the company pushing for a self-driving car. You think about all the stuff that people are going to do when they're not focused on driving. Fascinating. You ever wonder like what kind of jobs people will have 10 years from now? We can't even imagine, right? There's going to be some person hooking up restaurants with cars and coupon codes and stuff, like stuff that we've never thought about. That example in particular is fascinating. So there's a bunch of business aspects to it for sure, but also how about like handicapped drivers? If you couldn't operate a car, knowing you could get a special custom car that has handicap access and you can get into it and just say, take me here, and have complete freedom in your life. Talk about game changing. I could not imagine what would be more game changing than that. Also, if you're older, like my parents are older now, right? They're still doing fine, but when they're older, my dad's the kind of person who's fiercely independent. I don't know what he's going to do if I had to like take the car keys from him, but I wish, or I hope for the near future, where he could just hop in his car and tell it where to go, and it could do all that work for him. Even that would be hard for him because he's a control freak. I don't know if he'd easily let go of the steering wheel, but yeah, food trucks. Somebody mentioned food trucks. It really is ambulances and first responders.
Endless. Yeah.
Imagine if a police officer could like have the car drive where he's going and he's looking and like putting in information or pulling up stuff or doing other tasks, right? We really couldn't even fully imagine it. Although we're probably doing a pretty decent job of thinking of some unique examples. But yeah, the future is going to be wildly crazy. Oh, I knew I was forgetting one. Dusty Green, who is one of our patrons, one of our huge supporters and huge members of our community, just said, wait till Tesla makes a self-driving AI off-grid RV. Okay, that is the ultimate use case. If I had an RV that drove itself, I'll take that.
Yeah.
Forget about the
I'm in line
luxury
for that.
amenities. Me too. Me too. I
Yeah.
think Tesla should do that. I've talked to Dusty about this before, but that really is the sucky part about an RV is as long as you're in motion, some sucker has to do the driving while everybody else can enjoy themselves in the back.
Right.
What if the RV drove itself? Man,
Well,
I'd buy
hopefully,
that.
Cybertruck is going to be, plus whatever attachments attached to that sweet bed, right? Like, I'm hoping that there's an RV hitch or back end that goes onto the Cybertruck. I would buy that in a heartbeat.
Well, in Florida, you guys are, lawless over there, and who knows what's allowed. But in California, you're not allowed to drive in the back of a fifth wheel. Of course, you're not, right? So that wouldn't maybe work. But maybe there's something that they could figure out. Yeah, that's a fascinating one. So clearly, this is why the FSD beta is of interest to people. And I will say it's a step in the right direction. I was happy to see that they've made some improvements with the visualization because I think that'll get people excited. You mentioned, I think earlier in the video, people are very visual creatures. So if you told them like, hey, this car is really smart, trust me, that's one thing. You show it, you show the smarts of the car, and people are blown away to this day in my car. And my car doesn't have any of the latest stuff. But you show how aware of the situation, the environment the car is. Like, for example, you're driving and you go to change a lane, and the minute, like the car will first of all kind of fight you unless the blinker is on. But if the blinker is on and you're changing lanes, the little car animation to your left, he turns red. And my wife on several times has been like, there's a red, the car over there is red because the car is so smart. It knows what's happening. And that really does give people that sense of presence. And watching Raj's video, even for the short time we had it, it looks incredible. Like the level of advancement is wild. It detected people and they were like animated and walking, and that I think even if under the hood, I think they've done some really big architectural changes. They approach things differently, getting rid of radar, depth mapping, and some of the other components that they're doing with their pseudo lidar ranging techniques. It's starting to show, and I would expect there to be 9.1 and 9.2 and roll. So I'm glad to hear that people are excited and they believe that Tesla's progress is on track, because I really think it is. We can get caught up on all the excitement about Elon promising a feature, but that's just his excitement. He's so into this, and he's really ambitious and optimistic. And to me, that's not a bad thing at all. I'm kind of the same. I'm always off on my timetables. I can have that done in a week. It never works out. But maybe it's a good or bad thing. Who knows? But we shouldn't take away from the fact that they are doing incredible work with this technology. And I will say they are the forefront, right? I can't think of a company that has a better or bigger lead than Tesla does. I think what they're showing is how advanced they are with their their supercomputers now and Dojo and all this other stuff. LN, thank you so much for joining the channel membership. Really appreciate you. I'm not sure if I've seen you on before, but really awesome to have you. Clearly, it's because of you, Alex, that he's joined. So I'm really awesome and excited. I think we should do this again when Raj is in town, and we can do this and talk about just like hands-on experiences and stuff. From what I've spoken with him for about an hour yesterday, and he says the advances are pretty substantial. It's a marked improvement over what he had before, and that the progress is really positive. And there's still ways to go. There's still some things that it needs to figure out better. But is there anything you want to close on? Is there any final thoughts you want to leave us with? Again, by the way, for anybody watching, ticker symbol U, Alex, check him out on YouTube. These videos, if you're enjoying this, he literally does this like every week on every topic you can imagine. It's incredible. Energy dense is what I've always told you. Your videos are like energy dense. You're one of the few people I don't put on like 2x playback speed, because 1x is just fine for me to digest it all. So thank you for joining us, man. You rock. Really good insights. I think we should do this more frequently. We've talked about this, but you want to leave us with some takeaways on FSD 9?
Sure. Yeah. I think FSD 9 is the start of something phenomenal. I think what we're witnessing is a little piece of history that we're going to be talking about for a long time, is this big narrative of unlocking our time and moving from that paradigm of us driving cars to cars driving us, and finally getting a lot of our time back. One of the things people don't like the most about their lives, and especially their professional lives, is that commute time. So think about how powerful it is to be getting some of that back. So like Ricky mentioned, I run a channel called Ticker Symbol U. Ticker Symbol U is all about understanding the things you invest in and ultimately investing in humanity. And I think this is a prime example of investing in humanity to unlock that time so that we can use it to build the next thing, right? And I'm excited to see what the future holds and what's built on top of all these amazing innovations that are starting with this vision only system that Tesla is developing and slowly rolling out. And we're on the bleeding edge of it. It got rolled out yesterday at midnight, right? So, we're not even 48 hours into it. So it's really exciting to be having this conversation. I think the future is awesome. And I'm super excited that I got to have it with you, Ricky, and all of your awesome viewers.
I just got auto-corrected. It took ticker symbol U and put spaces. So I just put a link to his channel, ticker symbol U, youtube.com/ticker symbol U. Fantastic stuff. And by the way, if there are topics that you want, if anybody who's a viewer of Alex's, what we do on Tuba Da Vinci, we talk about the future. We talk about the tech side of it, right? So we kind of straddle that spectrum where we talk about the tech and what goes into the future of wind turbines or energy storage and batteries. And Alex does it from the investment perspective. So there's a ton of overlap. If you have ideas for us to cover other topics in the future, write to him or I. Hopefully subscribe to both, all that good stuff. Thank you all for joining. This has been fantastic. Alex, thank you for making time. I think we should do this again soon. But until then, thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time, yeah? You'll come back?
Absolutely. I would love to. Thank you for having me.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
So thank you guys so much. That was an hour and a half. Again, sorry for being a little bit late, but this is fascinating stuff. I think FSD is one of those things that I don't think about it all the time, but when I do, it's like, okay, what have they done lately? What new developments have they had? So this has been a fantastic stream. Thank you for all your insights and stuff. As always, we had a couple of new channel members. If you want to join the 2-Bit tribe, as we call it, here at Tuba Da Vinci, we believe in community. Our viewers help us write scripts. They help us research stuff. There's several people you've seen in the comment section who have that special banner. That's because they're a channel member and they contribute to us in tons of different ways. We're actually in the process of having the first community script where somebody had ideas, they got together, and they actually wrote the entire script that we create on our channel. That's the community. And if nothing else, we can just shoot the breeze and talk on little Zoom or Discord calls and just all kind of nerd out. Odds are, if you like people like Alex or me, and you like the kind of techie, nerdy stuff that's happening, and you believe the future is going to be awesome, you're going to like people in this Discord. So if you want to join, you can join on Patreon or as a YouTube channel member. We'll have links in the description. We'd love to have you on board. Thank you to all the new members and all the super chats and everything else. I'm Ricky. This is Tuba Da Vinci. If nothing else, just remember, the future is going to be awesome.